globalism will be our credo.
What is it you're waiting for? Do you even know anymore?
These are people who work hard but no longer have a voice. I am your voice.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to a brand new live stream. It is great to be with you guys on a Sunday night, and we have a lot to talk about. Some good, some not so good, some very interesting stuff that I honestly don't care that much about at this point, but I still feel like it's necessary to talk about. So we will start off by talking about the big, beautiful bill, which passed, which is good. And again, make sure if you guys want the camera on, we got to get to 100 likes first. You guys know the drill. We're at 82, which is good, but we need 18 more. We got 200 people in chat, so like the stream. Hopefully, we're going to have a smooth stream tonight, smooth live chat as well. We're going to be talking about Elon Musk losing his mind with this third-party idea that probably is not going to go anywhere. Even he admits that he's only going to focus on a few districts, but I mean, depending on which districts he focuses on, that could be an attempt to sabotage the Republicans come the midterms. Also, we will get to the Epstein stuff. That's kind of late, a late addition to the stream for sure. We will cover the findings from the Department of Justice about the Epstein files as well. That'll be probably the last thing we do before Super Chats, which we hit 100 likes. Before I turn the face cam on, I must tell you guys that if you guys want to have me read regular chat at the end of the stream, if we want to hit our goal, 20 Super Chats, we'll be doing 5 and above. If we can get 20, which I think we will, because that's going to contribute to the conversation. Some of the smaller donors can help contribute to the goal that way as well. We will be reading regular chat. So feel free to send in a super chat, any question, any concern. We're going to get to it because I know these are very, I've gotten a lot of, I wouldn't say hate or pushback, but I would say like a lot of criticism from certain people. Maybe it's a loud minority. It's definitely a minority that has been pushing back about this bill, about the Elon hate, which I wouldn't even say is hate. I'm objectively analyzing the situation. I always said Elon's not really on our side. If he can help us, it's great. I said that with the purchase of Twitter, which actually overblew my expectations in a good way. And now it's X, and for some reason it still works. It didn't lose any steam. If you want to call it X, you want to call it Twitter, you want to call it whatever you want to call it. At this point, I think more people call it X than Twitter. But regardless, it worked. You have this whole ordeal with Elon, and it's just, we'll get to that a little bit later, guys. But I did want to talk about the big, beautiful bill, because this is Trump's biggest achievement. It was his best week as a president, best couple weeks as a president than any president has had in my lifetime. You could talk about Bush after 9/11 when his approval rating rose up to 90. I don't count that. I was not even sentient at the time. So in terms of stuff that I've witnessed in my lifetime, the most successful several weeks. You have Trump, again, taking out, or at least just flexing on Iran and not getting us into World War III like so many people said. I said, this guy knows what he's doing. He is not somebody who is going to be another George Bush and get us into a war. And he didn't do it. And then you have all this other news that is happening, and then you see what's going on. You get all these reports. No, the tariffs are not causing inflation as expected. The jobs numbers look great. We get all these deportation numbers, the self-deportation numbers. And now, the big, beautiful bill, which is his entire agenda, that is massive. And I wanted to cover it. We've beaten the topic to death, even more than Joe Biden beat Medicare. but we still have to cover it because this is crucial. And it does tie into the Elon stuff as well, because Elon is not happy about this bill. And it's funny because this bill gives you Donald Trump's agenda. You may not agree with every part of it. It may not be perfect, but it is a great piece of legislation. And again, it's viable. You can't be like a Thomas Massey and make the perfect the enemy of the good all the time, even though his idea of perfect isn't really all that perfect, because he doesn't want to fund the border wall. He doesn't want to fund, immigration enforcement at the rate that Donald Trump wants, and that's a problem. You'll have a lot of people, the same people that will say that Massey was right, will say that Trump is bad because he makes a statement about, farm workers, which I think is a valid criticism, by the way, of Donald Trump if he goes through with it. I don't think he's going to, because he has a lot of people that are effectively pushing back. I think the main person that does need a lot of pressure is Brooke Rollins, because she's the one who is just begging Trump, and it's still a problem. Even if you want to say, well, there's 20,000 people that have been here 30 years. And obviously, I'm not going to say those people should be deported first, because there's plenty of people in the backlog from the Biden years that need to go. Half the illegals are from the Biden years. Yeah, we want to get them out first. That's obviously true. But, you got to make sure you just have these sweeping raids. You want people to go home. These people are not here legally. That's a problem. If you want temp workers to come in on temp visas, not a fan of it in many cases, but if you actually have shortages, that would be a problem. That would be much better. They would work here, they'd send money home and now get taxed on it because you have a remittance tax, then they go back. So those, that kind of thing, yeah, we would be looking into some sort of program if we need it, because sometimes, they'll have these agricultural jobs. Oh, nobody wants to pick strawberries. And then you see the report, all these people in Nebraska lining up for the jobs now that the illegals are out. And it's like, wait, I was told that we wouldn't do that. Americans don't do it because of the pay. If they actually got compensated fairly for the job, they would do it. We understand that. So record funding for ICE, full wall mass deportations. People that want to sit up here and say Trump is backing off his agenda on deportations, they're not. He's not doing that at all. In fact, because you can see that this bill, ICE is funded with maybe $9 billion a year under the Biden years. Well, guess what? Now it's going to have $150 billion. It is going to be funded at the rate the military is. And these people, in terms of our military, that should be the focus, protecting our homeland. We've been protecting everybody else's borders except for our own. If you can't protect your own, you shouldn't be protecting other borders. I understand you'll have people that will say we can walk and chew gum at the same time, but we're not walking, and the chewing gum part has not really panned out too well if you look at the Middle East since we've been there. You've had all this destabilization across the globe. It's been a big mess, regime change wars all over the place, money being sent overseas, not sent in the communities that need it here. That's a problem. So you have that. Then you have the extension of the 2017 tax code. So you have the middle income brackets, because everyone wants to say this bill's a bill that's welfare for the rich and it removes welfare for the poor. That's the talking point that's nonsensical, because the wealthy had the permanent income tax brackets lowered, which if you want to yell at Paul Ryan or even 2017 Trump for doing that, be my guest. But it worked out politically speaking. First of all, I can't be too mad about that. That's how they do these things for political reasons. But now you have the middle income brackets. Donald Trump, this bill does not, bail out the wealthy. It bails out the middle class in terms of the tax cuts, which is huge, because you could say, well, the wealthy, if you cut their taxes 1%, that's like tens of thousands of dollars. But if you do it for somebody that is making $50,000 a year, it's only a few $100s, but that still goes a long way for people. That's whether it's you want to say their cable bill, whether it's whatever. The average family of four getting a tax cut of $2,000 per year is pretty good, and it will stimulate the economy for sure. And a lot of that money will go back into the community, because there's sales taxes, there's all sorts of things that they're going to be able to spend it on. It's not going to balloon the debt or deficit the way people think, because in 2017, that's what they said, and it didn't happen. Also, the remittance tax, it's not as high as I want it. And that, I think, is a legitimate criticism. But again, we can't have a perfect bill. The Senate watered that down. It should be we could say in a perfect world, it'd be 20%. But there is the Laffer curve for a reason. If people are going to be taxed too much, they're not going to spend that money. So let's even just say it's like 8%, 9%, 10%. If we can get it close to that, Mexico will have paid for the wall. Everyone said that's impossible. Donald Trump could never get Mexico to pay for the wall. This makes it happen. Maybe in like 20 years' time, I would like the remittance tax to be raised. But the fact we even have one, and the fact we didn't have one, is absolutely ridiculous. So even if it's 1%, I'm not happy that it's only 1%, but the fact we have one is a massive step in the right direction, and you cannot ignore that enough. So also, it cuts $1.6 trillion in government benefits due to fraud and abuse. Democrats are angry. Saw a tweet today, well, J.D. Vance grew up on food stamps. And it's like J.D. Vance's family, I believe his grandmother worked. He worked even, if you watch the movie. It's true. So work requirements for welfare are extraordinarily popular. In the Supreme Court election in Wisconsin in 2023, when Republicans lost, or the conservative lost by 11, on the same ballot, like 80 to 20 work requirements for welfare passed with flying colors. Medicaid might be a little bit different, maybe not as popular, but still, it's worked in Arkansas very well. It encourages people to get jobs. You could debate to what degree, but now that we have these mass deportations, it's very likely that the jobs are going to be wide open. More people are going to be working. There's going to be less reliance on Medicaid. People are also going to get better jobs, have higher wages. They'll get their own health care. They'll get their own, through their employer, through their benefits, you name it, that sort of thing. That is massive. And you will see it's like a feedback loop, I believe, where you're going to have less reliance on Medicaid, and that's where the cuts are going to be. And it's not like they're stripping health care away. People will say, well, the rural hospitals, but then this bill funds them with $50 billion. So again, the money has to come from somewhere. You didn't see a spending cut with the last bill, but now you see it. This bill, in terms of new taxes, actually lowers the deficit, assuming you see continuous revenue and growth. Also, the Golden Dome to protect America, that's huge. The Made in America incentives, that's huge. You talk about jobs, you talk about industry. That's kind of like a tariff without even using tariffs. It's like a reverse tariff that actually works. So again, Donald Trump's biggest accomplishment, this is his entire agenda. Especially if the deportation numbers rise because of this, which I believe they will. And if Democrats want to run on that, they're going to get their asses kicked in the midterms. Just depending on if Elon Musk decides to play spoiler, which I don't believe he's going to be able to. And we'll talk about that in a second. But it's like promises made, promises kept. This is a good bill. It's not a perfect bill, but this is a good bill. And I would like to see I'd like to see a lot of this be codified further. I'd like to see steps taken on in terms of the remittance tax to be raised. I'd like to see certain defense bloat spending cut as well. There's so many things that I believe that we could do, and I think they're going to do a second big, beautiful bill next year. And Democrats are they're in disarray with this messaging, and we can cover this tweet here from the Democrats because, again, they said big, ugly budget bill. So this is Democrats. Their messaging's awful, first of all. It was, taco, and now it's big, ugly bill. And who knows? It was, remember, convicted felon. They made him look cool because everybody knew it was bogus. Everybody knew he was, like, targeted, by the regime or whatnot, which he was. And it made him look cool. But you see how this really goes on. They say 17 million Americans kicked off of healthcare. How many of those people are actually Americans versus illegals? Because it does have the carve-outs for state Medicaid where they will cut the spending if they don't cut healthcare for illegals. It wasn't as, written in stone as it was in the original iteration of the bill because John Thune can't stand up to the parliamentarian. If people want to blame J.D. Vance, they can try, but then if he would have struck it down, you would have had a floor vote, and it would have failed because they're not going to overrule the parliamentarian. If John Thune won't do it, it makes you think even a majority of Republican senators would. I mean, you need Democrat senators to join in. I don't think a single one would have. So again, you have that, but then they talk about this deficit increase that doesn't exist because they say, oh, well, it's the tax cuts for millionaires and which it's not because those were already set in stone. For the upper income brackets, they were already set in stone. There's no additional tax cuts for them, and it just continues the current tax structure, which again, has the deficit grown since then? Of course, but it was excess spending even pre-COVID. It was not revenues dropping. Revenues actually grew. So that's not entirely the case. They're just lying about this deficit increase. In fact, it's a deficit decrease if you talk about the baseline you should use. Again, funds rural hospitals. They say rural hospital closures, but it funds them $50 billion to make up for any potential losses. And biggest cut in food assistance because it has work requirements for these things. And obviously you could say, well, certain people, they can't find work, but if they're trying and they're able to work 80 hours a week, at a minimum, they will qualify, which makes sense. Citizens and working citizens should be the only ones that are really having the access. And if they can't find a job, yes, it's true that they can get on those programs if they document that they're trying and they're not able to, but you should be looking for work if you can work, if you don't have a disability. This is like the fraud in the system. And if you get work, you're less likely to rely on this type of stuff anyways. So that's the bottom line about this bill. Everybody wants to fearmonger, and it's funny because the left says, no, it's cutting too much, but it's actually not cutting anything. If you talk to the more like libertarian Elon side of things, and he's just very upset and very distraught because of the fact that, well, the bill gets rid of the EV mandate. He claims that's not true, but I don't know if I really want to take his opinion at face value here. I just don't know if I do. But I will say this, again, this bill does reduce the current deficit compared to the actual baseline. So Elon should be happy if he actually cares. Yeah, it's not perfect, but again, you're not going to get a perfect candidate. This is the problem with the third party. And again, if you look at his third party that he wants to make, the America Party, it's a libertarian party clone without the actual, good parts of libertarianism. It's, he's he's pro-gun control to an extent. He's pro-carbon tax. And he just wants to cut entitlements. That's what he wants to do. And that's not something that's popular. People are already trying to, ahead of the midterm say you're going to have all this Medicaid, and it's a gamble the Democrats are making because they're very desperate. I'm not entirely sure that it's going to work because I don't think you're going to see all this fear-mongering come into reality, but they're banking on it because they know that's unpopular, even in some lean red states or whatnot. So when you look at this, Elon wants to take a third rail position saying the bill doesn't cut enough. Do you think that that's going to resonate with voters that are not fringe libertarians or people who would always vote Republican anyways? Of course not. Of course that's not how it's going to work. And the guy's just so broken by Donald Trump, it's unreal. He has this mindset of, the Republicans are not perfect. And this tweet's not just about Elon, it's about his supporters and kind of like the Thomas Massie type of people, where they're saying, I hate the two-party system, which again, I understand the Republican Party, it is not perfect by any means, but it's getting better over time. But you have people that say, I hate the two-party system, so I'm going to make a third party, or I'm going to vote for a third party. And what is that going to do? There are rare circumstances. If you are running in North Dakota as to the right, a Libertarian Party candidate, but it's to the right of the establishment Republican senator, yeah, it might be worth voting for them. They probably even come in second place. Could be a protest vote, could be whatever. That would make sense. If it's viable, it's viable. This is not viable in a swing district. It's not viable anywhere. And the candidates that he's putting up, it's cartoonish. He wants essentially to have this whole, he wants a robot army. He wants, in his platform, it's basically, we're going to do Star Wars, but real life. It's who's going to vote for this? Who is exactly going to vote for this besides Elon Musk himself? And that's it. And you look at everyone propping up the account, propping up the party. You have all these accounts that are not even American. They're registered in India. They've said before that they live in India. It's like a bot farm that he has. And speaking of India, he's definitely going to be very pro H-1B. There's really no reason for anybody to vote for this party. I don't know who the target audience is. I don't think it's going to do well. If he spends more money trying to promote it, it might even pull less and less base off of that alone because of how unpalatable it truly is. And like I said, a third party in 99% of instances does not work in a two-party system, even in 92. which I understand if you want to say, well, Bush, another term of Bush or Clinton, they were not that far apart from each other. If you wanted to vote for Perot, you vote for Perot. But again, he didn't even win a single electoral vote. He came in second place in a few very deep red or deep blue states. Like, that was it. So you have that, and you can infiltrate a party. Donald Trump was a part of that Reform Party that Perot ran under the banner of. However, he didn't get anywhere, even though he probably could have had a nomination with them if he wanted it. Pat Buchanan ended up getting it at the end of the day, and he didn't win. But he, being on the ballot in certain places in Florida with confusing ballots, probably you could make the case very well did lead to Bush winning, but that's a rare circumstance for sure. And I love Buchanan, but you're not going to be able to win. I understand not, seeing much of a difference between Bush and Gore at the time. But a lot of time has passed. We're far more polarized. Republicans are far more authentically nationalist, populist, America first. And we need to continue that. We don't need to abandon ship. Yeah, we have a long way to go. I understand that. But if you even have people like Lindsey Graham that will co-opt your rhetoric, even if it's fake, even if it's to grift, the neocons are co-opting the rhetoric because of the way the wind is blowing. That's a good thing, in my opinion. Now, Lindsey Graham, I don't trust. Marco Rubio, I think, is a different story. I think his transformation's a little bit more genuine. But Graham, not so much. But the fact that you even have people like that will come out and say these things from time to time that are relatively populist in nature, it shows that you are making a shift. And that's a good thing that you're making the shift. Still, there's a new candidate that announced against him. I encourage people to vote for him over Graham because you could get an upgrade. It's a deep red state. You don't need a weak senator. But that's besides the point. The main point is that you have this system that is not going to be winnable by a third party, whether you like it or not. Whether you want that to be the case or not, it doesn't matter. And Elon is just going off of the rails. Everybody can see it. The guy, again, this was really funny because this is a tweet that said, Elon hasn't been right since the 62-year-old gay Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent kicked his ass. Remember the black eye? He said his son gave it to him. It's, rumor that Scott Bessent was the one who may have gotten in a little bit of a scuffle with him, saying, this says, sit down, Elon, we need to talk about the EV mandate. And then you have Elon saying today that Scott Bessent is a Soros stooge and always has been. Well, okay, Elon, if you believe that, first of all, why is he doing the opposite of what Soros would do in regards to trade? Why is he trying to have like a realistic tariff policy that can work and that can onshore jobs without causing rampant inflation? Also, why did you not push back against the hiring in the first place? Why did you praise it? So Elon is a very emotional guy, and we understand that by now, and he's motivated by spite more than anything in many cases. And this is just another one of those cases where Elon Musk is motivated by spite more so than actually caring about the truth. And this is the same guy, and we'll kind of venture into our final mini topic here. About Epstein and the files. He said that Trump was in the Epstein files, which, again, he has no access to. He could release him. I mean, he's the most powerful guy in the world. Who would stop him? He could be a hero if he proves something about Epstein or he knows all the names. He doesn't have it. He's just, he spurgs out. He crashes out. It is what it is. It's kind of sad at times, but what can you do? I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, we need Elon back. It's nice to have Elon on board because he does have money, he does have power. But if he's this much of a liability, then he can, we'll see ya. There's the door. You have him with the whole H-1B thing, trying to dilute Trump's agenda on that. And then you have this whole thing where he was in opposition to this bill and he couldn't articulate why the bill was bad. He says it's not the EV subsidies that are being removed, but honestly, I think it probably is, among other things, and I think that he's overstayed his welcome. I knew this would happen, but he said Trump was on Epstein's planes and he went to the island. He insinuated that, but the problem is, even if that happened to be true, which it's not, by the way, why would you let your son around Donald Trump? Why would you allow your kids to hang out with him? Why would you endorse him for president? Why would you do all this stuff? it's a little bit suspect, and some people will take Musk at face value to dunk on Trump for one reason or another. The problem about that is that they're just throwing actual reality out the window. And we see many cases of this. And now the Trump Department of Justice came out and said, and they released video footage of the Epstein cell, or the outside of the cell, finally, where he was, a lot of people would say he was allegedly killed, but obviously it's ruled a suicide. They ruled it as such. But they showed the video footage, and it turns out that nobody went in there. So, people can say that's like AI. People could say that they don't trust the footage. I don't really see why the footage would just be necessarily faked. But, it is true that I can actually, and I probably will get some hate for saying this, I can see the fact. I could maybe understand or theorize why Epstein would off himself, because you're under a lot of pressure. You're going to get absolutely destroyed in prison by the other inmates. They're going to prey on you, and you possibly could end up getting killed anyways by, the theory. So could he have done that? He could have. I'm not saying he did, but I don't think that it's lunacy or necessarily just believing the establishment narrative to think that, yeah, he may have done so. I will say that the report that they released saying that he never blackmailed powerful people is totally nonsense. There's nothing that you could really say about that. Now, I will say that I think the evidence has been mostly destroyed. Obviously, have bits and pieces. They've prosecuted Ghislaine Maxwell and all that. We understand. But the evidence is probably gone. Like, do people actually think there's a list of like 50 names and they're all celebrities or Democrat and maybe even some Republican donors that are on the list? If that list existed, you don't think the Biden DOJ would have gotten rid of it? And if Donald Trump was truly on that list, don't you think that it would have came out even if the other names had to be redacted? Let's be honest here. Let's be serious. We understand that the whole Trump-Epstein thing is kind of like, it's just slop. It's never Trump or slop is what it is, because they're trying to justify in 2025 why Blumph is bad, because they can't hold the L. You could just say, yeah, Trump's doing a good job, may not be perfect, but overall he's doing a great job. I'm glad he won. They don't want to have the maturity to say that. Maybe they don't actually care about anything politically. They just want to own Blumph because it's contrarian or whatever. But, you have these people that will say, hey, MAGA, the reason why they're not releasing the files is because your dear leader's name is all over them, which, again, we know Trump was friends with Epstein in the 90s. He was an eccentric billionaire living in New York. Don't you think that they would hang out, or people in that social circle would hang out that were eccentric billionaires in New York? Of course they did. It's well documented. There's plenty of people that me, you, the whole world has been friends with that turn out to be bad apples, and you gotta eventually cut them off, as Donald Trump did. Kicked him out of the club in the 2000s and cooperated with the investigation when very few other people would. So if Trump is some guilty man who is covering up for Epstein, or whatever you want to call the situation, then he's doing a very, very bad job of it. So obviously there is a lot of valid flack to give Pam Bondi and Kash Patel, because they promised and they didn't deliver. Dan Bongino promising, under-deliver. You can't do that. Maybe there's blackmail on them, some people will say. It could be. Or maybe they just haven't found anything. That's possible, but I think it's very likely that something was destroyed. But what you don't want to do is have a bunch of influencers go to the White House with this fake binder saying the Epstein files and nothing's in it. It's a nothing burger. It was an embarrassing thing. And most people have forgotten about it, as I anticipated by now. But it's just bad look. It's bad look for Trump, even though he had nothing to do with it. It's a bad look for him. They made him look bad, and they should be ashamed for that. Because there's a lot of good work that's being done in this administration. They're watering it down. And I might just be in the minority here when I say the fixation on Epstein is a bit strange. I would rather, what I would rather them do? I'd rather them come out and say the evidence has been destroyed and we need to gut the hell out of the FBI. Kash Patel should spend less time trying to find the files and just understand you're not going to find them, and then make changes to make sure this doesn't happen again. Because the FBI does a lot more than just cover up the Epstein files. We probably can get the gist of who was on the list. We know Bill Clinton was very likely involved, some other powerful people, one of the princes from the UK. There's plenty of people that were very likely involved. That's true. Donald Trump is not one of those names. But I will say, do we care as much about this as we should care about immigration or any other policy that is going to directly impact the lives of your everyday Americans? No, I think it's a red herring. It's like the whole JFK stuff. Yeah, we got the JFK files, but does that impact anything? No. Was there probably something going on with that? Was there probably like a second possible shooter involved? It's possible. But at the same time, does that impact things? Does that impact me? Does that impact you? I mean, it's interesting. Don't get me wrong. I'm, always up for, some sort of conspiracy if it's true. It's interesting to look into. But, I don't know if I'm going to sit up here and say it's like the end of the world. But we can't have cover-ups, and that part is true, and that will impact our lives in some way, shape, or form moving forward. So I'd rather have Kash Patel just burn, metaphorically, burn the whole house down and fire a bunch of people. Because if you do that, then you're going to make sure that you gut the deep state. The deep state is deep for a reason. It's not just a state that you can go into and look around and find a little list with everybody's name on it. It's kind of, cartoonishly ridiculous. These people are smarter than that. And Donald Trump's name is not on the list. Anyone who says that is just grandstanding of some sort of contrarianism, because it's like, now you have the Democrats are pouncing on it. They're not releasing because Trump's on there. It's like, you could have released them under the Biden administration and you didn't release them. So is this really the hill you want to die on? It's because they don't exist. Very possible that it was Bill Barr, who is a quote-unquote Republican, that threw the list in the trash, not because of Trump. Obviously, he's no big fan of Trump. He's thrown Trump under the bus several times. But because of the fact that there's many powerful people involved, probably on both sides, many names you probably have heard of and a whole lot of names you probably have not heard of. So that's that. That's the way it goes. Donald Trump's approval rating, relatively stable. It's going to be interesting to see how this bill impacts it. So many people were very anti the big, beautiful bill. But I think that when you look into it, it was a very solid piece of legislation, and there's a lot of promise that we got from this bill, and promises made and promises kept. So without further ado, I think it's Super Chat time. We will read what the chat has to say. We have 10 out of our 20 for our goal already, so make sure you guys Super Chat so we can hit that goal. We have 10 to go. So here we go. Stephen Kanizik for 5 says, Elon will prove how important American populism is when his American Party's main plank involves importing millions of Indians under the H-1B. Well, exactly. I mean, he's somebody that had told people to go F themselves in the face for calling out the H-1B program. Elon did say at the time that there needs to be reform to cut fraud, but is he actually going to go forward with that when he's been defending the program like it's his child or something? I don't know if I can see it. I don't know if I can really see it. Roku fan sent a bunch of Hindi. I think we get the reference here, but I can't read that. Do I have to put it in Google Translate? I'll do it if I have to, because why not? So let's see what happens. Let's see. Welcome to the New America Party. Very funny. Thank you for the 2 Roku fan. Videomaker 2341 says, Roku fan just spoke of Vivek. Well, we decoded it. Thank you, Google Translate. Mike Oxard for 10 says, Elon should rename the America Party to the India Party because of who's actually running it behind the scenes. They'll cut the deficit via 10,000% tariffs on soap and deodorant. See, comedy's legal here. We can read it, okay? Comedy is legal. A lot of people would laugh at that joke that I know that are Indian, that are cool, and that don't like the H-1B program, because there's many people that don't, and it's true. This party is being run by a lot of these accounts that are propping it up, have a history of saying that they're in India. What does that tell you? It tells you that the America Party is really not the America Party, and it's more the India Party. It's not politically correct to say, but it is objectively true. So yeah, it's become the H1B party. Super Jones Bros for 5 says, on X, a guy named One Good Turn crashes out over Koof on a daily basis. Who cares in 25? It's an unalived horse. Move on already. Yeah, I don't really see that much, but I'm sure some people are still in that whole mindset. They'll be for the rest of their lives, probably. Stephen Kanizik for 5 says, I'll just say I'm disappointed in how Trump redeployed the border wall alligators to alligator Alcatraz or national gator reserves are limited. The video maker 2341 for 10 says, many of the best and brightest from the third world countries are the majority of America's legal immigrants. They tend to be more affluent than the average American. Remittance tax is good here. That's true. But there's a lot of people that will abuse those programs like H-1B. They'll abuse them. They will lie about their credentials to come over here. It doesn't really add up when you look at the amount of people based on charts of testing who would have those skills. And if you deal with these Hindu nationalist types in India, which is very strange because they, for some reason, are very, very, very pro-India, but then they want their people to move here for some reason. And if you even just say reality or say facts, they will lash out at you. It's like they're some of the most disgusting vitriol I've heard about Americans has come directly from these like Hindu nationalist types on social media. And there's a lot on Twitter because I think Twitter's now over there. I don't know if it was before, but yeah, it's insane. Let's see. But Michael in NC1 says, can you clarify the Social Security provision in this bill ends taxes on payments or increases the tax deduction? Well, I don't know how it would exactly work in terms of if you like file your tax form or if you can. I think you can do it as you go from what I understand, but the deduction would just be increased. It's like a workaround because you couldn't have it in its like verbatim form in the Byrd law or the Byrd rule in the Senate, which I think a lot of these rules are ridiculous and hold up an actually good agenda. But what can you say? At least you do have the taxes that are close to ended. That's going to be a big break for the seniors in one way or another. Mark in LA for 5 says, America Party is an idea to make Elon a millionaire. Yeah, that's true. Well, I don't know. He'd have to really go under. He'd have to be doing like 20 times as much ketamine as he does right now if he wants to lose that much money. He's not even just a billionaire. He's on his way to being the first trillionaire, if anything. American Nerd 1776 says, didn't Trump leave the Reform Party in 2000 because it was becoming a mess and Perot left and went? I don't know if Perot left, but Trump did because it was becoming a mess. John Waffle H2P for 10 says, H1's a disaster. I see all the people on LinkedIn with obvious Indian names scamming people as hiring managers. I mean, it is true. I mean, you have these problems. Like, people will not talk about this stuff because they think it's like insensitive or whatever. But it is true that you have this industry in a country that will they really don't like Americans there. That's what I've gathered. They think they're better than Americans, which is a total joke because their country's in shambles. They got toilets 10 years ago. Their big industries involve call centers and scamming Americans. That is not a joke. That is not something that is said with any ill will other than just saying reality. And you can't really deny it. It's not, hate for a certain people. There's going to be good and bad in every country, good and bad in every group, of course. But you have a disproportionate problem in these countries. And are we not allowed to do anything about it? I mean, we should obviously be able to put pressure on, if not even sanctions, for them to stop doing it. How many elderly people have been scammed by just, India? All these people that are saying, I'm from the IRS. Yeah, they're not from the IRS. The India robbing service, maybe, but not the IRS. American Nerd 1776 says send Elon back to... Well, Elon is probably not going to be able to be deported, but it was so funny. Trump was like, we're going to look into it. Yeah, I mean, at this point, I couldn't really care less. Rich says the India party with unlimited H1. Well, exactly. I mean, you have a party that is basically being run in a foreign country. Elon has outsourced a lot of the hype for it to this foreign nation that has now just got monetization on a major platform. And now he's going to want to, they're going to want to call for H-1Bs. Like, what about the party is worth voting for? It's everything wrong with libertarianism and then everything wrong with, like, neoliberalism. Well, what's the point? It's the most unpalatable party ever because, they want to cut spending. It's like that type of spending you can't effectively cut well. I think we should limit and audit and make sure we can find ways to limit waste on Social Security. And obviously, I think defense is a big one. I don't know if we're ever going to be able to get that one done, but there's so much that goes on that needs to be taken care of. Brett BR says, join the America Party. First priority is cheap Indian labor for my rocket ships and massive government subsidies for my businesses and Diablo 4 character. That's straight from Elon Musk. LinRx52 says, thanks for the live. Word is Elon has not officially filed his party. He says the one being shared is fake. Well, I think he possibly will. Whether the one being shared is fake or not is irrelevant. Like, yes, we understand that, that guy on there is the chairman that, like, is not an American citizen. He's an Indian citizen. That is apparently not true. But we do know the accounts that have been propping up. I've seen dozens of them, and they all claim on their own accord in previous tweets to originate from India. They're not originating in America. So Elon's kind of having this like bot farm type of thing. And you've seen a lot of it on the other parts of the social media. I mean, you've seen how many accounts that are from Pakistan that are like trying to demoralize Trump from like the further right side, especially in the whole Iran thing. It's in both of those countries. It's just the two R words fighting meme at this point, except they're just coming together for a common goal to screw over Trump and America in the public discourse. Rich says, as a proud immigrant from New Delhi, I'll be joining the party. My top issues are EV subsidies, more H-1Bs, and ending Social Security. Thank you. Appreciate the super chat. Everyone's saying the same exact thing. The video maker 2341 says it's funny and sad how many Indians in America also discriminate against Indian Americans when it comes to hiring them for many jobs, not just America. Well, because if you're assimilated, and there's plenty of people that I know and happen to be friends and associates with or whatever that happen to be Indian American, East Indian, not native Indian, but they tend to have a disconnect. These people that come over here, the people that come on the H-1Bs, H-2Bs, they have a sense of entitlement and they don't assimilate. You have a lot of groups that will assimilate, even from some third world countries that we take in via selective migration that actually assimilate relatively well. But for some reason, you don't really see that with India. Even those who, score high or claim to at least score high on certain tests to get in or to have these credentials, there's a lack of assimilation. It's not all, but it's disproportionate for sure. We can't ignore that. We can't stick our heads in the sand because we're afraid people are going to call us names or because it's politically incorrect. If it's true, it's true. It's not all, but it is a problem, and we're not going to be able to solve a problem if we're not able to talk about it or if we're shamed by some rabid Hindu nationalists on X into not talking about it. So it is a problem for sure. XJ Cherokee Bear says, who does Musk think he is? Joe Walsh, apparently. They're both on the same side of that. Tucson Paleocon says, top 3 favorite rappers. That's a loaded question. I can't come up with that right now on the spot. I mean, there's plenty. Sean for 10 says, Elon can't be bargained with. He can't be reasoned with. He doesn't feel pity, remorse, or fear, and he will absolutely not stop until you are redacted. Yeah, I don't know if that, he will, I think he'll cave. I think Trump needs to meet with him because you don't want this party. If he does the party, make sure he does it in like North Dakota, South Carolina, states like that, states and districts where it's not going to have any impact on the House majority, on the Senate majority. If you want to go do your little thing, run your little weird 2028 candidate to get 0.2% of the vote, I mean, we're not going to be able to stop that, but if we can at least mitigate any possible damages to 2026 that would directly impact the makeup of the House or Senate, then we need to make sure that we do it, for sure. So Stephen Knisik for 5 says Elon wants everyone to know that he understands the American people, and as proof he will choose Jeb as his first presidential candidate. Well, yeah. You know, it's not even about that. I get the joke, but he will pick somebody and pick candidates that are just objectively unpalatable to the average voter. I mean, it's insane. He is not very palatable, to be honest. I think people enjoyed when he teamed up with Trump. I appreciate what he did in 2024. I'm not going to take that away. That was bold of him to do, and he did help Trump, and I think he's overstayed his welcome, though, as it stands now. He was an employee with Doge. He did his thing, and now I don't even know what he's got going on. He has a lot of personal issues. He does. I say pray for the guy, whether we like him or don't. I think it's important that we do. Hopefully he'll come to his senses and stop trying to sabotage good things. American Nerd 1776 says India Party reminds me of Paul Ryan's speakership goals. I mean, to an extent. If you want to talk about his original, we're going to cut entitlements, there's no, at least Paul Ryan pretended to be a social conservative and did pass some sort of a tax bill, even though it was, not as good as this one for sure. And Paul Ryan was weak. He couldn't get anything done, couldn't get healthcare done, couldn't get anything done. And he obviously, I don't even think he really intended to. I don't think he even endorsed Donald Trump in 2024. That's the thing. He purposely said, I'm not voting. It's like, we don't want your vote. This is part of the realignment, and I think it's a good thing. So, yeah, let's see. We are 2 super chats away from our goal, guys. Rich says, whites are mad at H-1B. Yeah, this is from the perspective of like a Hindu nationalist, I take it, where he says whites are mad at H-1B because Indians are, they think they're harder working. They think they're smarter than the average American. They think they're more American than MAGA. And it's like, it's true that these people genuinely believe this. And they don't assimilate, which is, again, contradictory. Most of them don't. These type of people that say this sort of thing don't. And I think it's a problem. If you want to import people into your country, you're going to have to import people that are at least culturally compatible with the country, or you're not going to have a country. Obviously, if you did it in limited numbers, I'm sure that the average American's opinion of the average immigrant from these countries would be higher, because you would have more of an incentive to assimilate. But when you take in hundreds of thousands of H-1Bs over a several year period, what is that exactly going to do? You're going to have these communities, and the communities are going to look different, and they're not going to be the same as they were before. And if people don't assimilate, that's a major thing. It's true. You have in certain parts of DFW, a lot of, especially in Collin County, you have a lot of immigrants from the subcontinent, and they don't assimilate very well, and the place is not the same as it used to be. But even like you'll have like Hispanic neighborhoods, and a lot of those people are like third generation, and they're relatively assimilated. Maybe they're not as high income as certain other groups on average, but still, like, at least they're relatively assimilated. A lot of them speak English if they're third generation. And some of them you can't even really tell the difference if the places have changed. But when it comes down to the communities from the subcontinent, it's a little bit different, a little bit of a different thing. I'm not saying there is no change in Texas from demographic change from Central America. There has been, but if you look at the difference of the change, it's like, it's night and day. So let's see. Cameron, let's see, hold on. We missed a couple. American Nerd 1776, his thoughts on Don Bacon running well, he's not going to run. These consultants, or he's not going to win if he does. These consultants that are hyping up these people, telling Brian Kemp, don't run for Senate, you're going to run for president and win. They just need to stop lying to people. Like they're doing everybody a disservice because I don't even know what it is. They're doing everybody in the world a disservice. Because they think, oh, well, I'll get paid and that's all I care about, so I can lie to these people. The consulting class is responsible for most of the Republican Party's electoral failures besides Donald Trump. I continue to believe that, and I don't think that there's any reason to believe that it's not the case. So Videomaker2341 says, it's funny because I've met many people from the subcontinent. The ones that came before 1990 are more assimilated and intelligent than post-90. Well, it's because you have the H-1B program. I believe it started under Clinton. I think that's exactly why. So Cameron Pax, his thoughts on white minority by 2050. It's interesting, definitely. I think this rapid demographic change, if it happened in any other country, it would be seen as some sort of like ethnic cleansing even. Scary words, I know, but it's true. If you did that, imagine if India became like 60% African or something like that. They would probably not be too happy about it. So again, it's something that has been deemed politically incorrect. You're not allowed to talk about it, but to imagine that you're going to have the same exact country is wrong. I think if you put a pause on most immigration, a net zero moratorium, you would encourage more assimilation. You would tax the remittances. You would deport the illegals, which again would incentivize assimilation. You will have more white Hispanic intermixing, where you're not going to end up with like I guess you would say divided cultural country. You'd have more of like an Argentina, Paraguay, Uruguay thing going on, not Paraguay. And again, you would basically, that's going to be probably more like, I guess you'd say 80-20 more so than whites being at 40. So I think that probably is what's going to happen in the years to come. Some people may not like that, but that's the way it is. And that probably you could say is like the best case for cultural, social cohesion. So TC Talks says Musk would have released the Epstein files if he knew that Trump was on them when they had the feud last month. Yeah, because Musk doesn't have any impulse control. So absolutely he would have. There's no question and no doubt in my mind. Curb Your Enthusiasm for $20 says, mixed man here, black and white. This Elon guy has me worried for the elections. Might mess up Mr. Trump in Vance midterms and Vance presidency election. I could be wrong. Hopefully I can ease my mind, but I'm not sure. Well, the midterms, I think, are what I'm mainly focusing on now. I think that if Elon screws up the midterms, I think that the party that he's created for the presidential election is going to have a lot more blowback, and it's not going to be seen as positively as people might see it, which is already not very positive. When they hear about the policies, it's like, what the hell, what kind of drugs is this guy on? But I'm not too worried about that. I think that Trump needs to just do his thing, and we'll see. Real Texan Politics with the member chat says, do you think Bondi, Patel, or Bongino should resign after the DOJ Jeffrey E. word? We could say Epstein findings. I think that they need to take their head out of the sand. Because first of all, I think Bondi, what she did with the binders was ridiculous. There's no defense for that. The Epstein stuff, it's possible he didn't kill himself. People will say, you can't say that. That's insane. You're caving to the establishment. But it's true. There's a chance. If that is actually the footage, which it very well could be, you can find dozens of reasons for why Epstein would want to kill himself. There's plenty of high-profile criminals that have killed themselves before trial because they know what would happen to them in there. Their lives are ruined. They're screwed. Maybe he knew it was coming. He wanted to go out in his own terms. It's possible. I'm not saying it's true, but it's possible. And you can't say it's impossible because you just want to chase a conspiracy narrative. Sometimes conspiracies are true. Sometimes they're not true. This would be one that I would lean towards it being true. But then if you have this and it's real, it's like I could accept it not being true. But what I can't accept is the report. They can't be this stupid to think that Epstein didn't have any strange things going on. Obviously he did. You have the Maxwell trial. We have bits and pieces. So I think it's incompetence to a certain extent. And I would tell them, please just gut the hell out of the deep state instead of like trying to dig the hole about this stuff. They already dropped the ball with the Epstein stuff. I can live with it because I didn't vote for Trump for Epstein. I voted for Trump in part because I want to clean out the corrupt institutions. I think that that's priority to prevent something like that from happening again, more so than, oh, we got to find a list of names. And that probably doesn't exist somewhere. Let's see. Cameron Pack says, I got to be real. I'm scared the white culture will be gone from the rest. I think that I think the culture that we've had has shifted. You know, people say, well, we're still like, we have like this 1950s culture. And we had it, and I think it was good, and I think there's certain elements of it that we still have retained that are good and that we can amplify that are good. I think that if you do, like I said, if you change the country, especially immigration without assimilation is invasion. I've said it for better part of a decade now, and it's true. So if you're seeing this rapid change and you're not seeing the assimilation, you're getting a different country. I mean, you had concerns with like Southern European immigrants in the 1920s, and it was a problem. And then Calvin Coolidge stopped the flow, and you saw a lot of assimilation, and you saw, Italians become more assimilated over time, and now they're one of the more successful ethnic groups in the country. I'm not saying that's going to happen with everybody. I'm just saying that we need to stop, and that's the main thing we could all agree on, is stop the flow. Stop mass immigration. We don't need more H-1Bs. We need less. Make sure that our communities can maintain some sort of cohesion. I think that's a valid way to do it. This whole, oh no, anybody can come in and we're a shopping mall, we're an economic zone, a dumping ground for the rest of the world's problems, that's not going to solve anything. That's not going to solve anything. So, it's something that we could see a lot of changes that people are going to ignore out of political correctness. I don't think we should ignore. If you import millions of people from Saudi Arabia into a community, that community is probably going to look like Saudi Arabia more than America. You're going to have mosques on every corner, and obviously we still have communities that are vaguely, pockets here and there is one thing. But if you have the entire, millions of people, you're changing towns, you're going to get a different country. It's reality. If you put a bunch of Americans in China, they will build an American town. I mean, it's how it goes. You did that. Speaking of Saudi Arabia, they did that. And now you have like an America town there, this like Aramco village or whatever. I think it's not as American as it used to be, but the rules are different. The laws are different. Like women can drive there, all sorts of stuff. So, I mean, it is true. The people of a nation do matter. And obviously there's people that could assimilate well from those countries, and there's people, but you're not going to have that happen when you have mass immigration. If it's very limited, those people over time are going to be far more likely to adapt, assimilate, because there's going to be more pressure. There's no need for a lot of these people. And the money that they send out of the country is insane too. Mark asks for 10. If I date a girl with a body count of around 10, probably that's pretty high in my opinion. So, probably not. But Roku Fan 1835 for 2 says, why does Georgia have the 50% rule? So dumb. I agree. Runoffs in elections like that are dumb. If it's like 40%, I get it. If it's 45 even, I get it more. In a primary, I think it could be useful. But a general election to have a runoff with a 50% threshold, if you get 49.9%, you don't cut it, and you have to have an entirely different electorate the next time. So I think it's a ridiculous concept that they have going on. The video maker 2341 for 5 says, have you seen the Pew Research data that came out about 2024? Trump apparently lost the Hispanic vote nationwide by 3%. Crazy. He definitely got in the 40s and possibly mid 40s. 3%, that's insane. I think among Hispanic men, he might have won. And I think that you are seeing assimilation of Hispanics, partially because a lot of the recent immigration, either it's like illegal aliens from not even Mexico, it's from like Central America, South America, and people that go to those places to go up to the border through Mexico, including from like Haiti and places like that. And you also have you have a lot of like other groups that have been, making up the piece of the pie. So again, that's kind of the main thing here. It's the immigration from Mexico since like the Great Recession has not been very high. For a while, it was net negative. It's mainly from a lot of these other third world countries in Central America, and a lot of that's been illegal. Democrats want to give those people amnesty. I say we don't do that. I say get them out. So let's see. American Nerd 1776 says Indian Party is going to be like Yang's Forward Party. I think it's going to be like no labels. These things happen and they don't go anywhere. Who are their candidates? We don't even know. American Nerd 7. Oh, we already did that. Wyatt says if we can't balance the budget and reform Social Security with all three branches, we never will, and it's Gen Z and their children who will pay. Look, I understand. We have a tightrope to walk because you can't win an election on that anyway, so you're never going to be able to do that, for one. For two, I think that there are possible reforms where people wouldn't lose their coverage that we could do. And Trump even has kind of like he's giving children $1,000 when they're born in the S&P 500, which means by the time that they're reaching college age, they basically would be able to pay off a year of college from that alone in this bill, which is good. And I think it is a great thing. Now, as for Social Security, could there be some sort of privatization? Even in these so-called like socialist countries, they're not really socialist, like, the Nordic nations. They have privatized Social Security. I don't know if it's going to be that viable here. It could maybe work in a certain degree, or partial privatization, but we want to do it in a way where we wouldn't have to be kicking people off of Medicare, Social Security. I think that there's plenty of workarounds for what we could do, and I think that just making sure the healthcare marketplace could be regulated differently to cut costs in half is viable, and then people are going to be able to afford it more, and there's going to be less of a need to rely on Medicare or Medicaid, and we're not going to be bankrupting the nation as much. So I think there's many things that we can do. Let's see. Michael in NC1 for 5 says, in your opinion, who would be the best candidate for the Republicans in 2026 in North Carolina? Well, a lot of people have talked about Laura Trump. I don't know if she's going to run. Trump didn't seem very confident in the fact that she would be running. I think she wants to raise her family. I think Pat Harrigan, because he's likable, he has appeal, he is relatively young from what I understand, and his name is just very North Carolina politician. You have, short first name, I wouldn't say very long last name, but it just sounds, it sounds like a politician that North Carolina would have. Like that's what you want, the branding of it, for sure. I think he could beat Roy Cooper. I think he would beat Nickel. I think there's plenty of things that we could do in that department. So let's see. We have a lot of super chats here. The video maker 2341 says North Carolina GOP is more incompetent than what most people think. They're good at redistricting, but they blew many statewide races. For example, Mark Robinson. Yeah, I mean, I think that they should have, if they wanted to release the dirt, you don't give it to the Democrats for them to do it at the last minute to maybe force them out. That's incompetent. You want to display it publicly so people know, so you can avoid nominating the guy. And they didn't do that, but they had it for one reason or another. At least talk him out of running and, go to him and just say, we have this. It's going to get out. The Democrats have it. we don't want you to run because you're going to lose. And then he wouldn't have ran, and you could have a Republican governor there. You would have more down ballot races. Probably Dan Bishop would have won the attorney general's race, but you didn't have it. So that's the thing. Cameron Pack says he's asked if I could agree that if I agree that immigration should be white only, not trying to ban. Well, I think that we need less immigration, period. That's the thing. You have these white immigrants don't vote Republican. They don't. You'd be importing white liberals from these European countries by and large. There's a few exceptions. I think Albertans assimilate very well. The ones that want to leave Canada, I think those people would probably be in the higher priority. I think there's several non-white groups that do assimilate well. A lot of Cubans in Florida, for example. There's plenty of them, but I think that the main goal should be to lower it significantly and then import people that share the values. They will be disproportionately representative of the current nation that we have. That part is true. But again, I think we need less overall, and that would be great. People will say that's going to hurt the GDP, and they don't understand that the more people that we've brought in, those people, they vote for economic policy that would decimate the GDP. That's the first problem. Secondly, these people have risen significantly in number, and the GDP growth is stalled massively. I think it's a major problem. Let's see. Jet Politics, his thoughts on the Japanese healthcare system. I haven't looked into that in a while. It's been a while since I've researched my healthcare systems. I think it is universal. Is it single payer, multi-payer? I think it's single payer. I don't know much about it, to be honest. It works there to a certain degree, from what I understand. But again, America is not Japan. And this is the thing. If we could do universal health care and it wouldn't raise people's taxes and we could not balloon the debt and deficit, I would say go for it. The problem is that the American government can do nothing competently. You can't even get a driver's license without waiting for a certain amount of time. Do you think that if we had, this, I guess you would say, government-run healthcare, government-run hospitals, do you think that would be beneficial? The DMV is awful as it is. The post office is awful as it is. It would be a disaster. It would be. And all these illegals would be on it. And you have this problem with mass immigration. You don't have that problem in Denmark. You have that problem. I mean, even in Sweden, it's kind of, they've had to cut corners in their healthcare system, and they've had to dial it back a little bit because of mass migration and those issues. So I think that what we need to do for healthcare is we need to make sure that we are able to make the population healthy. And that's what RFK Jr. wanted to do, so we don't have obesity rates that are significantly higher. And that's another thing. Denmark has a healthier public than we do. Japan has a healthier public than we do, so they don't have to spend as much money. I think what we need to do is make sure that we could lower the cost of insurance significantly. And if the government wants to have a plan to compete with the private plans, I'm fine with that. I'm comfortable with that as like a public option. And give vouchers to people under a certain amount of income that can't afford it. And maybe if you make a certain amount of income, if you're a millionaire, maybe you pay double for your premium so you can cover that, or you pay a certain percentage, or maybe there will be a slight tax, not a massive tax. Because I care more about pragmatic policy that can get things done. I don't want to, drum up the debt and deficit. And I think if we had a change like that, which maybe we could have had by now if we didn't go down this Obamacare dead end, then we would be able to have it. So there's plenty of problems. Big Pharma is a problem. These insurance companies themselves are a problem. And their relationship with the hospitals is ridiculous. And that's partially why healthcare in America is so expensive. Single-payer healthcare sounds good in theory. I don't think it would work. Multi-payer might be able to work. But I just think that the voucher program idea with the, if we're able to lower premiums overall, reduce regulations, do that sort of thing, where people are paying, maybe if they don't, if they're not getting insurance through their employer, they'd have to pay out of pocket, several $100s a month for a very solid insurance plan. If they're able to do that and we give vouchers to people that can't afford it, I think that would probably be the best route forward. And we wouldn't have to do this Bernie Sanders style thing. And, the free market would be largely taking care of it. And you would be able to not even, I think you could even replace Medicare or Medicaid that way too, if possible, if we could get that done. So we would really be spending less money, and it would be great. It would be wonderful. So, yeah, I think that's going to do it for the super chats. But we did hit our goal, so we are going to read regular chat. Universal healthcare will make quality go down. Well, in many cases, yes. I think that my plan, which is probably more in line with what they do in like Switzerland, would make a lot more sense. So that's true. People talking about the DMVs. Let's see what else we got here. Brian Kemp and Kristen knew when it comes to being selfish, first place. Yeah, that's true. Mike says he sent a super chat. Did I miss it? I'm sorry if I did. We got so many of them. I don't see one. I don't see a super chat from you, Mike. I don't see one. Do you have recommended books or book? I mean, there's so many books. It depends on what topic. Zippy says, will the Diddy case affect the culture? Strange verdict. I thought he got less than I would expect, but I guess it's one of those technicality things like OJ. He's still going to jail on or he's going to be charged with some charges, but I really think he was undercharged. Do I think they were eating the dogs in Springfield? Well, they were definitely taking, at a minimum, what we have confirmed is calls about ducks from the local pond. And it does seem like there may have been a cat thing involved. The dog thing, I don't know if there were any reports on that. But cats, it's possible. I think it's very possible. Because like I said, if you're importing hundreds of thousands, not hundreds of thousands, but tens of thousands of people from a nation where it's somewhat of a routine practice, it's very possible you have at least one case. So we don't know the full extent of it, but the Democrats before the election were extremely unhinged at the prospect of it. Have I ever called Myra? I've called senators before. I've never gotten a response. Should Trump use tariffs to get India? Yeah, I mean, they could. It's some form of sanction because it is a problem. They're scamming our seniors, and we shouldn't allow that to happen. So, let's see. Rate cuts. Yeah, rate cuts. I don't know if they're going to happen. The Fed is playing politics. They did it right before the election, but they won't do it now. Greenland has not been mentioned news-wise in a while. Yeah, I guess it hasn't. I guess you're right. I mean, it was being talked about for a while, and Trump was I think it's going to happen in our lifetimes. It might not happen during this administration, but I think it will. Love your work as an Australian. We have a lot of Australians here. I appreciate it, but you're not alone. Maybe it's the time I go live. I don't know if it's why we have so many Australians that will pop in, but we definitely have a lot. I love tariffs, but they're seen as short-term and unstable by companies hesitant to fully bring jobs back. The Made in USA tax and regulation cuts are the long-term framework to... Yeah, I agree. I think you can use both. John Waffle for 5 says we have prosecutors that are completely incompetent. Well, I agree. I think that we tend to. I think that probably is what happened in the Diddy case. So Cameron Pack is talking about. He says, "I think you ignore minorities' hate." Well, I think it is a case by case basis. It does go by case by case. on aggregate is what is important to look at when it comes down to certain questions we've seen asked about, like the Constitution. Immigrant groups tend to be more anti-First Amendment, anti-Second Amendment. A lot of that is because of the fact that they come from countries that have very, very different positions on those things. Although it is, to be fair, there's plenty of Europeans that are maybe more pro 1A, but not fully, and definitely in the Second Amendment. So again, assimilation could change that. But I think that in terms of these other groups, racially speaking, there's always the grievance woke culture that's been pushed as well, where they say the founding of the country is evil. That's the education system. The right has to take it back as well. There's so many things we need to do. And you can't, and like I said, I think we agree at the main takeaway here is that you can't assimilate all these people when you have all these people pouring in. But I will say that if you have people from, France or Germany that are going to be pouring in, some of them are probably going to be able to assimilate very well if they're, on the right in those nations. But they don't, again, you're basically importing a lot of like white atheist liberals, and I don't want to do that either. Yes, in terms of income or whatever, they're going to be at a higher level than some of these other groups, but there's other realms to assimilation. I just would rather cut it down significantly overall. And I think that we do have a massive problem generationally where you just have a weak society in general. I think that transcends those lines as well, and we got to fix that problem. And I agree, you can't fix it if you're importing 1 million people a year. We should cut that down to probably around 200-some thousand, and then incentivize people that can have families to have them. And if you look at the birth rates, it tends to be the conservatives that are having the kids, which is good. The liberals, transcending ethnic lines, they're not having very many kids. So we shouldn't also be incentivizing people to have kids who can't afford them. That's also a potential tweak that we could do to the child tax credits, because we want people to have families, but we don't want people to be, incentivized to bring people into this world they can't afford. That's not some sort of eugenics argument, but that's an argument to say if we're going to incentivize people to have families and we want to increase the standard of living, the middle class is where that's going to start, more so than people who rely on government assistance, and you're going to create more people who are relying on government assistance, and that's not good. So there's plenty of things we have to do. I don't know, it may get worse before it gets better in some aspects, even under this presidency. The American Nerd 1776 says, if SCOTUS seat opens up, who should Trump pick? It's a good question. I don't know. I really don't know. There's a lot of people that are on the short list. I mean, I could pull it up. There's that, I think Rushing is who Trump probably should have picked to replace Ginsburg instead of ACB. She would have been much less of a letdown. She's really sided with Alito and Thomas on a lot of these cases. You have, I forgot the guy's name, the Asian guy. I don't know what his first name is, but he definitely is really solid. He's in the mold of Thomas and Alito, and that's kind of what we should be aiming for in our justices. Look and see who has the track record of just being like the good justices on the court. That's what we need to do, because these other people that Trump picked in his first term, and a lot of that was because of the Federalist Society, Mitch McConnell, they were not all that solid. And, Gorsuch is all right, but then you have the other two that are not all that solid, and they'll play musical chairs of having the bad takes and all. It's ridiculous. American Nerd 76 is, what if Elon's India party teamed up with the Libertarians to increase ballot access in 28? It could be a bit of a problem. Well, the good thing about them putting Chase Oliver out there and Trump courting Libertarians is that the Libertarian Party is decimated with their ballot access because they did so bad. So it's definitely a tough haul to get on the ballot anywhere. So we'll see. Yeah, was it Judge Ho? I forgot his first. Was it James? I think it was James. But yeah, he's solid. So John Waffle H2P says Eastern Europeans would most likely be more Republican. Yeah, I agree. Maybe not Ukrainians anymore, but And definitely there's going to be the left. They'll love immigration, but they'll push back on Russian immigration. I'll tell you that much. They don't like Russian people. It's just insane. But I agree. There's certain countries in Europe, like Poland, they would assimilate well. Certain parts of Europe would. Certain parts outside of Europe do as well, to varying degrees. It's less common, but it can happen. So I think overall we just need to limit it significantly. Repeal the Hart-Celler Act, or at least just take it down to 200-some thousand a year. We've been handing out citizenship like free candy, and we need not do that. So Video Maker says, Bondi, Bongino, Patel today, don't fight it, don't fight it, don't fight it. It's Kenny Loggins, Steve Perry music reference if you don't know. Yeah, I don't get the reference, but I'm sure some people do. But they've wasted a lot of energy on this, and they haven't produced anything. I think that they should use their energy on gutting these departments that are disastrous and allow things like this to happen. That's what they should be doing. So, not every FBI agent, believe it or not, is some sort of elitist, liberal cover-up person. In fact, the only reason why the FBI dropped the Comey report on Hillary in October as the October surprise is because half the FBI was ready to quit. Comey didn't want to do it. He was doing everything he could to help Hillary, but he had no choice. And Trump fired him, which was great. He did that very early on. Someone says, I'm very libertarian. Government should have little to no say in anything we do. Well, again, it's where do you draw the line is the question. Because some people will say that and then they'll just allow anything to happen under the guise of freedom. And you can't have a libertarian society when the people are not able to self-govern properly. And I think people should be able to, and I think we should incentivize people to self-govern themselves. But you can't be so blind to say that if we just get rid of every regulation in society, socially, economically, everything's going to be fine. Yeah, it's not going to be as likely to be the case, whether you like it or not. That's my take on it. So because if you have something out there that is weakening the public significantly, you could make the case that it should be banned. I'm not saying that we need to be going out there trying to ban everything that's harmful. I understand people will talk about this slippery slope type of thing, but it's like AI, for example. There probably does need to be some regulation on AI. I'm not going to try to ban alcohol, but drunk driving, for example, it's one of these things where, maybe not a felony in some cases, but if you're going to be doing it, it's I understand why that would be illegal, because you're doing something that is against the law and possibly could harm other people. And things that just are easy fixes for people to harm themselves. You could even make the case that drugs, for example, hard drugs should not be legal. Most of them, I would say, should not be legal. I'm not asking for ridiculous sentences. I'm just asking for making sure that you're not allowed to shoot up heroin on the street without any sort of repercussions. Mike Diaz for 5 says, what do you think about our turnout problems in local elections, especially off years, school boards, supervisors, etc.? How bad is this long term? Well, I think that we need to show up. We're fired up back in the Biden years, at least in terms of those school board elections in 2021, and it's just Democrats fired up. And I think it's that we're not a very high propensity party. And when you combine those two things, you're going to have a lot of underperformances. So I don't know how bad it would be long term, but hopefully 2026 is going to be a bit better because it's like a advertised full election. Wyatt says, with the benefit of hindsight, how do you feel about Trump's near assassination? Is it still suspicious to you? Yeah, it is very, and I would rather us investigate the hell out of that than worry about Epstein. I'm not saying that we shouldn't look into Epstein, but we definitely need to find this out. This is important. Nobody knows anything about this guy. It's insane. They can find a lot of things out in certain investigations into certain things very quickly, but this guy will know nothing for some reason or another. So yeah, they can look into both. I agree, they should, but I think that this is a higher priority. They've spent so much time Epstein, because I guess the base is calling for it. I would rather call for the Butler situation. So let's see. I think we're gonna wrap it up. We've done a great stream, and it's been great. We hit our goal. We had as many live viewers as we could get for this hour, because I know it's late, and I think we're going to be wrapping up. So thanks for everyone who tuned in. Like the stream down below, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications so you never miss another video or stream. Follow me on social media. The links are all in the description down below, and I will see you guys in the next one. Red Eagle out.